It's an car and a modern Nissan at that. Looks like this episode was gonna perform poorly in the algorithm. They can't all be Honda Actys. Honestly, if you even clicked on this video, congratulations. I am reviewing an car this week, a 2014 Nissan Maxima S. The base model of the 7th generation of Nissan's flagship car in the States. Chassis code A35. Just meh, and more meh. A Japanese car for American tastes. As a car that's supposed to sit above the family car Altima, it doesn't really feel that much more special than the two generations of Altima the A35 intersected, the L32 and L33 Altimas. In fact, it shared its wheelbase and is about the same size in general as those two cars. So it's not exactly a full-size range topper like a Chevy Impala or Toyota Avalon. The current generation of Maxima, A36, is actually smaller than the current Altima, L34, but the A35 just didn't feel that special to be a true range topper. While those newer models have a lot more style, thank God, they still run into the same problem this Maxima does. It just feels redundant to have two similarly sized and priced sedans in its lineup. It's really my problem with the Maxima as a whole. I just don't get it. With Toyota's models, there's a clear hierarchy of its range. With Nissan's two larger sedans, they've always just kind of felt same-ish to me. While early Maximas were known for being kind of sporty and sleeperish for the time, the current ones kind of meh while still trying to sell you on that sleeperish sportiness. Out of all the Japanese automotive manufacturers, in the last 20 years, Nissan's non-sporty car lineup has felt the most American. They're not bad cars, they're just repeatedly meh. I've mentioned this a couple of times in some older Nissan videos I've made, but this is one of the reasons Nissan's gotten into a pretty bad sales slump in the 2010s. Their whole lineup just felt stale, while every other manufacturer was seemingly pulling out all the punches to sell mid-size cars. Hyundai and Kia went through a renaissance while the A35 was in production. Chevrolet rewrote the Malibu into a true competitor in the segment. The second-gen Ford Fusion rocked the midsize world when it debuted in 2013, and the Camry and Accord still did Camry and Accord things very, very well. But the Maxima is supposed to be a range topper for Nissan's cars. Meaning it's supposed to compete against cars like the Toyota Avalon. That car has always been on top of Toyota's range. Sitting inside an Avalon, even a beat up one like I did earlier this year, you just felt this was the most Toyota you could buy for your money without going Land Cruiser. But the A35 Maxima just doesn't feel special. It just feels like another Nissan. And when you dive into it, it just gets more and more ho-hum. You had one available engine in the 7th generation Maxima, the 3.5-liter VQ35DE V6 hooked up to a CVT. Now, this wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing in the 2000s. Large front-wheel drive sedans usually have a top-of-the-line option of a V6. But this is the only available engine for this car. No base 4-cylinder, no Turbo 4, which was rapidly becoming the go-to engine for this class, and no hybrid electric version. What compounds the issue is that this car came out in a period where gas mileage was becoming a very large concern for many buyers post-2008 financial crisis. And the VQ35DE makes terrible gas mileage at an EPA rate of 19 city and 26 highway. The owner, Keith, says he averages around 22 miles per gallon during his normal commute to work. Do you want to know what my 2006 Pathfinder with the slightly larger VQ40DE made, according to the EPA? 16 city, 23 highway. So if you take just a little bit of a gas mileage hit, you could have a decent truck-based SUV with a lot more cargo and passenger room on top of four-wheel drive. A very decent four-wheel drive system at that. I shouldn't even be comparing this car to my Pathfinder of old, but those paltry MPG numbers immediately bring me there. And like most Nissan cars of this era, well, VQ cars of this era, it recommends premium fuel. My Pathfinder was the same way. You could run it on regular if you wanted to, but according to Nissan, they use it to prevent engine knocking and pinging in high-performance engines and improve fuel efficiency. Long story short, my Pathfinder wouldn't idle as smooth if it was running on regular. Honestly, with this being a standard port-injected engine without direct injected, I simply don't understand why they do this. I have this theory that it has something to do with Japanese getting slightly better gasoline than the States and keeping their engine tuning to run on higher octanes instead of tuning them to run on America's crappy 87 is some sort of elaborate cost-cutting measures for them, but honestly, saying that out loud makes me sound like an idiot. Honestly, for an AN car, a commuter, this is a strike against Nissans of this time. Especially when their competitors run on cheaper gasoline and provide much better fuel mileage. There were rumors / plans for a diesel model in 2010, which would have been very cool for the time, but it never came to fruition because we can't have nice things and Carlos Ghosn was busy cutting costs so he could pad his pockets. Yeah. It drives okay, I guess. It's just a forgettable car. It puts around city streets perfectly fine, and it feels fine on country roads. Meh. Just meh. I bet many of y'all have even rented a Nissan Maxima at some point, and in fact, this very Maxima is a former rental fleet car. This does mean that this particular Maxima, though, is optioned weird for an S. The S, of course, is the base model for the Maxima and many Nissans. But, being a former fleet model, it has the spoiler and wheels from a higher level Maxima from the same year, but not having much of the goodies on the inside from a higher model. It's still an S inside. Weird, I guess. So you couple those wheels and the spoiler with the bullnose styling of the A35, it adds a little more flair to an otherwise meh car. The owner bought this car when the rental company phased it out of its fleet with just over 22,000 miles, and he's put over 76,000 miles himself for a grand total of 98,000 as of the filming of this car back in April. He's had no mechanical issues since purchase, just regular maintenance, especially with the regular fluid changes for the well-known finicky CVT of this era of Nissan. Well, I think I did a bad transition there. I don't care. So yeah, the 7th generation Nissan Maxima S, it's just meh. When they first came out, I thought they were kinda neat looking. This was a time where Nissan was doing some really cool things, such as the R35 GTR, which is now on its 12th year. Man, that car was so cool when it came out, and unfortunately we've forgotten. But yeah, I thought these were neat, but they became boring looking really quick. The other large / mid-size offerings simply were more interesting to look at and were nicer inside. Fortunately, the 8th generation came out in 2016 and was instantly a looker compared to the last few generations of Maxima. The A36 Maxima was marketed as a 4-door sports car like this one, but honestly, the very angular styling fits it a little better than the A35. The current Maxima has helped push Nissan back in the right direction in offerings and cars that are modern and honestly not boring looking. Not just treading water off the goodwill of their 80s and 90s models. Back a couple years ago with my Pathfinder review, I waxed poetic about how Nissan has been stale for far too long, and fortunately, they're finally turning themselves around. Slowly but surely. We're even getting a new Frontier finally. Yay. But this car, it's just forgettable. In the run-up of the sedan apocalypse and everyone else throwing the kitchen sink at their sedans to try to keep them selling in the exploding crossover market, Nissan just sold us the automotive equivalent of Mountain Lightning with a straight face. The 2014 Nissan Maxima S is a meh car from a meh brand of its time. Thank the Lord that Nissan appears to be finally back on track. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you once again for watching another episode of Wookie Drives. This week's episode comes courtesy of Keith of Mooresville, North Carolina. If you have a car or truck you'd like to see on the show and happen to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, specifically around Mooresville, feel free to email me at wookiedrives@gmail.com. That's wookiedrives@gmail.com. Check out my Facebook page at facebook.com/wookiedrives for channel updates. And check out my Twitter and Instagram at WookieAutomoTV for more Wookie shenanigans, rants, raves, whatever that's puking out of my brain at the moment. Don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment, share with all your friends, and please help subscribe, help this channel grow. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and have a good night.
Nissan has developed a new high-performance sports car with a modified Z-Car engine, anti-sway bars front and rear, and anti-lock brakes. The cockpit was designed for one 6'2" driver and 4 6'2" passengers. Introducing the new Nissan Maxima, the 4-door sports car.